Hi everyone, this is Group 7 presentation and our topic is social and political impacts of imperialism. And the group members are Thomas Bosire, Gregory Nyagucha, David Osando, Vaikoti Chepkurui. And I'm going to tackle governance, the imposition of authoritarianism and extractive rule. Here we find before imperialism, governance in many regions was localized based on complex systems of kingship, councils of leaders, or established monarchies with traditional checks and balances. Okay, another point is centralization of power. Colonial governance was highly centralized and authoritarian. All final authority rested with European governor who answered only to the home government. Then there is tool of control. The new governance relied on force such as military and the police. Taxation like the art tax and the poll tax were introduced, and a rigid legal system that prioritized European property laws and colonial interest over indigenous customs. And then there is creation of a bureaucratic class. This to run the administration, the colonizers needed local clerks, interpreters, and junior officers. This created a new Western education elite who were often caught between their traditional societies and the colonial system. And then lastly, there is the legacy. Here we find that post-independence, many leaders inherited this authoritarianism blueprint. They often continued the practice of ruling by decree, seeing opposition as a threat to the state, which they viewed as their personal possession, much like to the colonial governors did. Okay, that was my presentation. I welcome the next presenter.
I'm Chepkurui. I'll take you through the state formation, the creation of artificial nation. We have imperialism created new political entities, colonies that eventually became modern states. However, the logic of their creation was external, not internal. The second one is the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. This is the most significant example. European powers sat down in Berlin and drew lines on a map of Africa, creating a new territories with no regard for the pre-existing political, linguistic, or ethnic landscape. The third one is imposition of new structure. The state was imposed from outside. It was a structure designed to serve the imperial economy, not the people within it. There was no organic growth of national identity. The state was an alien apparatus. Then the last one, we have the legacy of a weak state. At independence, this new nation inherited the colonial borders and the colonial state structure. They were now states in search of a nation. They lacked a shared sense of civic purpose, and the state itself was seen by many citizens as foreign and potentially hostile entity, just as it had been under colonial rule. Thank you. I now welcome the next presenter.
My name is Gregory Nyagucha. I will take you through ethnic division, the policy of divide and rule. Perhaps the most destructive political tool of imperialism was deliberate manipulation and hardening of ethnic identities. Imperialism made them rigid and competitive. Invasion of hardening of ethnicity. Second, it led to divide and rule. This was a conscious strategy by favoring one ethnic group over another. Examples: in Rwanda and Germany, the Belgian colonizer solidified a fluid social distinction between the Hutu and the Tutsis. Next, in Nigeria, the British amalgamated the northern, mostly Hausa and Fulani Muslim. And I'd like to welcome the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am David Osando. I'm going to take you through the political instabilities, the inevitable result. The combination of authoritarian governance, artificial states, and hardened ethnic divisions created a recipe for profound and lasting political instability. Post-independence power struggles. The day independence was won, that's after independence, the new nations faced a critical question. Who gets to control the colonial state we just inherited? Politics immediately became a zero-sum game. If the state controlled all resources and if your ethnic group was locked out of power, you were locked out of everything. This led to, number one, military coup. The army, often the best organized institution, frequently step in to seize power, promising to restore order. Africa, Asia, Middle East saw dozens of coups in the decades after independence. Another one, the secessionist movements, the artificially of the state-led groups who felt marginalized to try and form their own nations. The most famous example is the attempts of the Igbo-dominated eastern region to secede from Nigeria as the Republic of Biafra. That was in between 1967 and 1970, leading to a devastating civil war. Then the civil wars, the failure of governance and ethnic competition frequently spiraled into large-scale civil wars, as in Angola, Mozambique, Sudan, and Sri Lanka. Between the Sinhalese-dominated government and the Tamil Tigers, another group whose identity was politicized under British rule. Now, in summary, imperialism did not just exploit resources, it fundamentally remade political and social structures. It created states without nations, introduced a model of governance based on force and extraction, weaponized ethnic divisions to maintain control, and left behind a legacy of deep-seated political instability that independent nations have struggled to overcome for generations. Yeah, that was Group 7 presentations. Thank you.